Hello, and welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we look for ways and discover ways to achieve those two goals. And we invite folks on to help us. And I'm very happy that you've discovered us, that of the 2 million podcasts out there, that you were able to find us. I'm grateful and amazed and very honored that you're here. And we will absolutely make it worth your while. And today, to help us along those lines, we have Dr. Amy Wheadon. And Dr. Wheadon is really doing something incredibly cool, and I think you're going to be psyched about it. She's a pediatric OT, which is occupational therapist, and she owns KidSHINE LLC, which is an outpatient pediatric occupational therapy private practice. And you might be saying, what? I mean, first of all, kids aren't working. Why do they need occupational therapy? Why don't we start with that, Amy? First of all, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Very happy to tell people all about occupational therapy and what we can do to help kiddos.
Yeah. So, what people who don't know, who have never had a friend or a parent or whatever in occupational therapy, and who might not even be familiar with what that means, could you just sort of give us an overview of what it means for everybody, and then specifically how kids need it and use it?
Sure, absolutely. So, occupational therapy is a profession where we help people to return to everyday life activities that may have halted due to injury, illness, or some other event. In the pediatric realm, we look at developmental disabilities. We look at kiddos who are having challenges with fine motor, gross motor, sensory motor, social skills, those types of challenges. And what we do is we really try to support the child's ability to be functional and independent, and to live their life with confidence, and just be happy and successful in their everyday tasks.
And it can be very challenging, I would think, especially, kids are so hard on each other, right? If you can't do something perfectly, like my nephew had trouble at first, like playing with, playing ball and stuff. And I think, he got some flack, I think, from other kids. And does that enter into it at all? Do you know, like that whole psychological or emotional or whatever that would be called, the
So much.
support?
I mean, it's funny because we start working with kids as young as 2 in our clinic.
Wow.
And so when they're little, they're just kind of going about their day, doing their thing. And usually it's parents or sometimes preschool teachers or physicians that will reach out to us and say, it's looking like maybe this kiddo might need a boost in terms of their strength, in terms of their coordination, just kind of being able to meet those motor milestones. And kids, when they come at that age, they're just coming to play, and they're playing, which is their occupation at that time, they are building skills and just kind of moving towards those next stages of development. As kids start to get older, we start to notice that they do see that gap more. So, school age kids, elementary age kids, which is the crux of a lot of the kiddos who come to us here at our outpatient clinic, they're, struggling a little bit more in school, or they're having a hard time integrating themselves into social situations on the playground, or they're really having a hard time staying focused and seated at their desk. And so they're noticing that things are a little bit different for them. And so they're asking us for help as much as their parents are asking us for help as well. And so, from that perspective too, we really try to foster self-awareness as kids get a little bit older,
Mhm.
and self-advocacy, so that the kiddos are able to say, this is what I need, this is going to help me. And we've also tried to really create a community here where people feel loved, and where people feel safe, and where people feel welcomed. And so from that perspective, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and that's so important, especially and kids, right there. There's so much going on as they develop and grow. It's just hard to be a kid these days.
It is really hard to be a kid these days. There's a lot that we're asking of kids, and we're asking kids to stay focused in a classroom for 7, 8 hours of a day.
Yeah.
Now we're throwing all of these different changes and constant transitions with everything with the pandemic. And it's really hard for kids that are already, especially kids who are already struggling, to then say, what do you mean now I have to do school from a computer? Or what do you mean now I can't see my friends? Or, what do you mean now I everything needs to be typed and typing is hard for me. So we're constantly pivoting and constantly figuring out how we can support kids.
Yeah. And that's a good, you bring up an excellent point that I've wondered about myself when I see these really young kids, with masks on, and that everyone they see has a mask. And I don't know, I mean, how does that impact kids?
So we have, spent a lot of time really working with the whole mask situation. And I remember when we reopened, we were a phase one facility because we're a medical facility.
Mhm.
So we reopened in the end of May, beginning of June, and parents were so worried about the masks. So worried about, is that my kid going to be able to breathe with the mask on? How are they going to be able to understand facial expressions? I mean, we're talking about sometimes kids who just have a harder time reading those social cues anyway.
Yeah.
um, and then, of course, the whole sensory component. So kids who are extra sensitive to touch or extra sensitive to things on their face or their hands, parents were like, how are they going to put a mask on their face? They don't even let me wash their face. So we, started with a whole bunch of different strategies to help kids, and realized and noticed once they came back to the clinic that 75% of the kids, I would say approximately, put the masks on no problem when they saw that they were going to have the ability to play again. These kids had been in their houses for 2.5, 3 months, and then all of a sudden it's like, welcome to this big indoor playground. Here's a safe place for you to play if you have your mask on. And so they would just throw those masks on and play.
Yeah.
And then there were other kids who really did need additional support in order to increase mask tolerance. And then we have face shields here too that we sometimes would use for kids, especially for kids who have a harder time understanding the social cues, because when you're covering half of your face, you have to read just the cues from the eyes. But sometimes if we have a mask and a face shield, we'll pull down the mask so that with the look at my mouth, look at how happy I am. So we're really kind of giving that whole multisensory support for understanding what it is that we're asking and showing them to do. So yeah, the mask thing originally was a little bit more challenging, and for the most part, kids are very resilient and they just kind of roll with it.
How about the other pieces of all the other, I mean, pretty far reaching parts of the pandemic, and how it's affected kids? Like you said, everybody, when everybody was going to school from home, what kind of impact did that have on kids with no socialization for the most part?
That was hard. That was really hard. We had a lot of kids. Well, actually, it was interesting too, because there are some kids who were struggling socially before the pandemic. And then once they were doing everything remotely, independently at home, all of those social struggles that they had kind of temporarily disappeared. So they were thriving initially. And then you bring kids back into these social settings, and it's like you forget how to interact with people. I mean, even as adults, I had a bunch of moms here this morning. I was doing a workout class with them, and all outside with masks on, and they were like, it's just so nice to be around people, and kids are the same too. It's like, they want to be around people, but then they forget how to do it. So we have, again, being a phase one facility, we were able to start reintegrating very small groups back last summer. Again, socially distanced, a whole bunch of precautions in place, with masks on. And but just giving the kids the opportunity to, from a distance perspective, interact with other kids, and for us to be there as like scaffolding and support for the kids, and say, oh, looks like so and so wants to take a turn. Can you finish your turn, and then he'll have a turn. So really still providing that in person, in the flesh, as opposed to over a screen. But it's been an adjustment for sure.
I'm sure, and for all of us, I know, everybody, all my friends have different levels of comfort as far as going out and doing things and being part of, being out in the world and stuff like that. But I'm seeing the people who are more cautious, that they seem to be more depressed. They seem to be more this sort of feeling of hopelessness, and this is going to go on for another year, and what are we going to do, and blah, 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 as opposed to like, I've been going out pretty much since the first day I could go anywhere. Like the New Hampshire restaurants open, I'm like, I'm going to New Hampshire and going out to eat. That's it. And
Yeah, I mean, it has been really hard from that perspective. And, where we're seeing the increase in depression rates is with teens specifically. And it's also funny, or not funny, but interesting that teens are the ones who are glued to their phones, and they're the ones that are having the hardest time with their only option being to be glued to their phones.
right.
So,
Funny.
yeah, so we're, again, just saying there's opportunities for you guys to, within your own comfort zone, get together, do small groups, be outside. It's springtime now. So
Yeah.
we're starting to see things are kind of easing up a little bit, just in the sense that we can get people outside
Yeah.
more safely, and continue to give them those opportunities to be with other kids, with other people, with still within their comfort zones.
Yeah.
Um, and it's about just making sure that, we've had a very specific protocol that we've been following from the very beginning. And the feedback that I've gotten from so many parents is that they really appreciate those protocols, even though there have been times where I've had to say, I'm so sorry, you cannot bring your child in here today. Or, we take a child's temperature and it looks a little bit higher. I'm like, okay, well, this is our protocol. You can't come in today. And it's hard. It's really, really hard to do that. But we just want to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe and that everybody feels like they're safe when they come here.
Yeah. And that's, I'm sure, a big part of your whole treatment. You're part of what encompasses the environment that you're creating for everybody, is that they do feel safe, both emotionally and physically, and, in every way.
100%.
Yeah. How about kids who don't have I don't want to say the luxury or the benefit of coming to, because obviously they're coming to because they have an issue, but folks who may be under the radar from that perspective, where they don't have anybody who's aware of what they might be struggling with. And I mean, I can kind of imagine, like, the parents are home, they're in different rooms trying to have their work, and then the kids are trying to do their schooling, and maybe they're not realizing, and the changes are so gradual. What are some red flags we can look for that our kids are maybe being sort of psychologically affected by all this, and help them deal with that?
Yeah. So one of the first things that, we have parents look out for is just changes in a child's self and emotional regulation. And that's where we've been getting a lot of phone calls, but that's where we're also kind of just seeing comments from parents like, oh, so-and-so's daughter, I referred them to you because she's really, seems to be getting upset more frequently. And so, it's kids who are getting upset more frequently, who are, prone to outbursts, who are also highly active. This is one of the other things to keep an eye out for, is kids who are not getting that level of physical activity that they were getting prior to the pandemic. If they need that level of physical activity to remain focused and they're not getting it, you're going to see those kids jumping on the couches, rolling on the floor. And it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I'm actually not. Like, there's kids who they're trying to get that physical outlet. They're trying to get that, what we call as OTs, proprioceptive input. So they're trying to get that in any way they can. And so if jumping off the couch and rolling on the floor is the way that they can help their body to feel calm, they're just trying to figure out what to do to help their body feel calm. So if you're a parent and you see your kid, if you describe your kid as bouncing off the walls or constantly moving or never being able to settle down, they might be a kid who would benefit from an OT evaluation and OT treatment in an outpatient clinic.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to circle back for a second too, because I know when we were talking before, I was trying to describe, what we do as OTs. And, depending on what setting you're in, for pediatric OT, you might see OTs looking at different things. So in school systems, the focus is being able to be successful within the school day. So that's been really interesting during the pandemic, where what measures successful during the school day, so it's really hard for our OT colleagues to figure that out in a school setting. Like, what can I do as an OT to support your child during the school day when they're doing it remotely from a computer?
Yeah.
Or they're hybrid and you never know which day they're in or out of the classroom and needing to keep track of everything. In an outpatient clinic, especially one like KidSHINE, we're really looking at how we can help the child to be able to process information from their environment from a sensory perspective, and also to build those build strength, endurance, and foundational skills that they need to be able to be successful in school and at home. So, we're looking at it from a little bit more of a broad lens than a school system OT would be, because we're also saying your child's having a hard time sleeping. We can help you with that. Your child's having a hard time tolerating food. We can help you with that. Your child's having a hard time tolerating getting dressed. We can help you with that. Your child can't settle down to sit at the dinner table. We can help you with that. So, we really want to make sure that we're looking at all of those different areas that impact the child's daily life, and supporting it. And so when parents come and they say, my child's bouncing off the walls. Okay, so is that affecting their ability to get dressed? Yes. Is that affecting their ability to sit at the dinner table? Yes. Is that child trying to tell you something?
Yes.
And then we go from there.
How about the other direction? Kids who are just more feeling lethargic and, just can't. My nephew, we had trouble getting him to get up out of bed. He just didn't want to do anything.
Yeah, so that's also something that we see a lot of. Again, a lot with the older kiddos too, where the combination of the pandemic, the remote school, and wintertime makes it really hard for kids to get out of bed. I mean, our philosophy at KidShine is we really value and use high intensity exercise as part of our treatment. It's a little bit unique. It's something that's not done in a lot of other more traditional outpatient clinics, but we really try to bridge that gap and understand that connection between that endorphin rush that you get from exercise and that overall just feeling of well-being, and just feeling like you're on even ground for that day. So we really try to teach kids how to build exercise into their daily lives from that perspective. It gives them the endorphin rush. It builds strength. It builds endurance. And the more strength and endurance you have, the longer period of time you can, participate in activities before feeling fatigued. And then, the depression factor is also something that comes into play. And that is something that, as OTs, we would look at how that's impacting the child's ability to complete their daily life activities. And then we would also refer to someone who's a psychologist or a psychiatrist who could help with the actual other components of that.
Yeah. Is there any kind of, thinking of the folks who are beyond your reach as an OT, are there things that maybe kids who don't require or who don't have access to an OT program, are there things that the parents can do to sort of help the kids to normalize this experience? Or
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's really important, again, not to beat a dead horse, to make sure that kids are outside when they can be and are being participating in physical activity. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a team sport. It can be, the playground, or it can be, riding bikes or going for a walk, or, in the wintertime, shoveling snow, in the fall, the leaves. I mean, we like to always bring it back to function as OTs. So some of the things that I'll suggest is you've got a school age kid, and, the only way you're going to get physical activity out of them is to have them do chores. Great. There are so many chores that provide strength and sensory input: dragging the recycling bins down to the end of the curb, pulling wet sheets out of the washer and stuffing them in the dryer. I mean, if you think about like both of the physical and just, the exercise that you get out of those types of activities, it can be meaningful for a kiddo. So that's primary. And the other thing that I would say too is, it depends on the child's level and type of conversation you can have with them, but just talking about all these transitions. I mean, I've had this conversation now with my youngest daughter, who's 10, a couple of times, where I'm like, "Are you excited you're going back full time to school?" And she goes, "Well, I'm worried about recess, or I'm worried about where I'm going to eat lunch. I'm worried about what the bus is going to look like." And I'm fortunate that she's able to, articulate that to me. But it's really important to try to have those conversations with your kids, in whatever way you can, to be able to find out what they're worried about, and then help to problem solve with them. Like, okay, so let's see if we can figure out how we can make this transition easier for you. For younger kids, we love to use things like social stories, or even just books in general about, transitions, just reminding them what the school day is going to be like. um, I've had a couple of clients who have and school systems who have offered to have some kiddos come in before the return to school to have a tour of their classroom if they're going from full remote back to in person. A tour of their classroom. If they have a different teacher now, get to meet their teacher ahead of time. If it can't be an in-person tour, it could be a virtual tour, but just ways to just make things more consistent and more predictable for kids is just going to really help them to be able to navigate this latest transition.
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually. The idea of a virtual tour of the school and stuff like that. Like you say, kids that are going from one grade, one class, sometimes one school system to another as they get older and stuff, or even if it's their first time. That seemed to make things a lot more comfortable, and you've got some familiarity when you go back there, and just to ease some of that anxiety.
There are some schools that have had to shift what school their grade is going to be going to. So, for example, there's a school system that the third graders were in one school, and now with the return school, they're moving the entire third grade to a different school
Oh,
mid-year.
wow.
Yeah. So, and I understand that there are reasons why schools have to do things like this, because they're
Yeah.
trying to figure out numbers and logistics and things, and empty classrooms and things like that. But again, like, you spend 3/4 of the year virtually looking at one classroom in one school, and then you're finally returning back to school, and it's like, surprise, new school, maybe a new teacher mid-year. So these things are really, they're big scary things for kids.
Yeah.
School's their life.
It's true. And I wonder how many parents, with all the stuff that they're dealing with on their own, how many parents are kind of realizing how much stress and anxiety this could cause their kids.
That's an interesting point too, because I think in the special needs community, the parents are actually better prepared for this because they're used to helping their kids with transitions, and really kind of helping with providing concrete strategies ahead of time. And, for kiddos, neurotypical kiddos who just are expected to roll with it all the time, like, for example, my daughter, like, it dawned on me after I was like writing a blog post and like thinking a little bit more about it, like, gosh, I really want to check in with her and just make sure she's okay with it. And then when I checked in with her, I was like, oh wow, I'm so glad that I did. I
Yeah.
mean, as parents, we're like, yes, the kids are back to school.
See ya.
We can do all of our work during the day without interruptions every 10 minutes. But, and yes, some of that is true. But at the same time, our kids are like, another change, mom, help, or, and if they can say that, that's great. But if they can't,
Most kids probably can't,
yeah.
especially like, my nephew's 13. I mean, he doesn't communicate about anything. You can't even find out what he wants for dinner, never mind how he feels about these huge issues.
Yeah, so those conversations are key. They're really key. And again, kind of taking the lead when the child lets you know, even if it's a child, a teenager, a preschooler, no matter what age, they'll let you know one way or another what it is, whether it's through words or through actions, or, they're back in school for 2 to 3 weeks and you start to notice that they're, having a harder time getting up in the morning, or they're, coming home so amped up from school that they need to run around the house 15 times when they get home from school. They might
Mm.
not be able to say, I'm overstimulated going back to full-time school, but that's what they're telling you. So that's what you want to be looking out for.
Wow, that's really, I'm really, I imagine that many people are saying, oh my God, I wish I would have thought of that. Like, I'm so glad that Amy said that to me because now I need to check in with my kids, right? I can see how it, like you say, like, oh, thank God the kids are back to school. And I'm sure they're really excited to get back with their friends. And that, let's just leave it at that, right? Not even thinking about all the change and everything that they've been dealing with.
And sometimes it's like it's the simplest thing, or something that an adult might not think is a big deal, that will stick with a child for so long. Something that's just like, oh, recess. Okay. You should be so excited to go back to recess. And then the child says, but none of my friends get to be on the playground when I'm on the playground. All of my friends are on the field when I'm on the playground. What do I do?
Right.
So checking in is really important.
Yeah. And I suppose, with everything going on, kids could even have a fear. Some kids might be afraid of becoming infected.
Yeah.
Do I need to cower in a corner and not be around my friends so I don't get sick?
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be still a fear. I mean, that was something we saw a lot when we reopened, with the kids who came to us, and we put signs up like, "This is a safe place. We're here to help keep you safe. Washing our hands help us, to keep everyone safe." Kids were aware that we were doing spraying in between clients and everything that we were doing to keep kids safe. And some kids just needed to hear, "This is what we're doing
Hmm.
to keep you safe."
Yeah. Yeah, because they normally would absorb the anxiety of the parents and of the world at large, right? I mean, all you have to do is turn on the television.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm glad this came up, that we're talking about this. I think this is very powerful. It's going to help people for sure. But Amy, did you always do pediatric OT?
I did. So I've been in OT for 21 years.
Hmm.
I started in a school system. I was in a public school system from when I graduated for about 8 years, took a break here and there to have a couple of my kids. I dabbled a little bit in adult home care, which was fun. And I think being in adult home care for a little while, basically going into people's homes and not really knowing what the situation was going to be like until I walked in there, it taught me how to think on my feet, and
Hmm.
it helped me, when I returned back full time to pediatric in an outpatient clinic setting. You have to be able to think on your feet with kids. You have to be able to switch gears, on a dime, to be able to support what they need, and to keep them engaged in what it is that you're doing with them. So I went back to outpatient clinics. And then about 5 years ago, when I had been working in an outpatient clinic, I made the decision to just go for it. And so I basically said, I'm going to give this a shot. I have a finished basement, so I put some swings in my finished basement. My kids were a little bit younger, so I borrowed all of their toys. And I started seeing a couple of kids. I started treating some kids privately, one to one, in my basement. And then I was doing a functional workout class with a friend of mine at the time, and I had talked about potentially renting some space in his gym for treatment. And I was like, you know what? It's going to be too loud for some of the kids who have auditory sensitivities. And we've got a lot of preschoolers and parents who have multiple children that would be trying to get up and down stairs and stuff. So I said, I don't think I could rent space in your gym for treatment. I'll do that in my basement, but I can start these cool classes that have been in the back of my mind for the past 10 years that I wanted to get going with. And so that is the boot camp program. And that is how that got started. And so basically, what it started was a group for kids who were transitioning out of OT, who didn't necessarily need OT anymore, but still benefited from a little bit of supported practice, with team physical activities, and kind of a little endurance and conditioning boost. And then I noticed that more and more kids who were getting OT started signing up for these boot camp classes. So I made the classes more structured. I really revamped the entire way of thinking about it, and really looked at it from an OT lens and said, okay, so here we're doing exercise like CrossFit, like high intensity exercise. These kids, whether they're 3 or 15, they're flipping tires, they're doing battle rope slams, they're
Wow.
climbing all over the rock walls, using Bosu balls for dynamic balance challenges, med ball slams, all of that. They all do it during the class. But I figured out a way to make it OT. and really to bring in that meaningful activity piece, and to keep it also structured, but loosely structured enough that kids would have the opportunity in this safe environment to socially interact organically with a little bit of adult support. So we've got now about 10 classes per week that we run. We run classes for preschoolers up through teens. We run classes for kiddos who benefit from support that are more therapeutic. And then we have some recreational classes as well. We have a girls empowerment program that we run for 2 age groups. Our teen classes, like I said, it's a teen conditioning class. So it's a little bit of like proper form with weight training. And then also we've like bringing it back old school, and they're playing kickball, they're playing capture the flag, they're being kids, their phones are gone, their phones don't come in. These are like
Yay.
16-year-olds, their phones do not come in. And they're kicking it old school, lifting a little bit of weights and then playing old fashioned games with one another.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah, so it's really exciting. And about a year and a half ago, when I decided on top of all this to start getting my doctorate, I decided I wanted to do research on this program. And that was really exciting. Basically, what I did was a pre-test, post-test study. So I had a group of kids in 2 different clinics, my clinic and another clinic. And we had them answer a bunch of questionnaires before they started. And then they did 16 weeks of our boot camp group. And we had a whole manual put together. Everything was very structured. And then we had them answer the same questionnaires at the end of the 16 weeks. And then we did like a data statistical analysis on the results and found that the results were significant. They showed significant changes, statistical and clinical, significant changes in their ability to focus, to process sensory input, and to participate in their daily activities. So I was like, wow, this program that's like all exercise based is helping kids with, daily life. So we keep going with it. We just keep building on the program and watching it grow.
Oh, that's fantastic. It certainly sounds like fun. I mean, for every kid would want to at least be in the boot camp.
Our new facility, which we actually moved into about a year ago, right as the entire world shut down. It's a big facility. It's 4,500 square feet, and I
Wow.
dedicated 1,600 square feet, one whole room, to the boot camp program. So we've got a rock wall, a ninja line, a cargo net, a warped wall, massive amounts of tires, all sorts of stuff in there. And that's where we do all of our classes. Pre-pandemic, we were doing birthday parties too, which is fun. We're hoping to be able to return to those at some point in the future.
Yeah.
We run camp programs like summer programs, school vacation week programs, and after school programs as well year round. So there's lots of opportunities for all different ages and ability levels to participate in boot camp, even if they don't need OT.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. Jeez. So this is exciting because we can even like touch on your sort of entrepreneurial journey a little bit. I mean, how did you, it sounds like it was a leap of faith, right? You just said, okay, and that's it. I'm doing it.
Yep. It was a leap of faith, and it was just me at first. And when you do OT evaluations and treatment, because we're part of a medical model, we do take insurance. So that's a whole process in itself to be able to like start, credentialing with each insurance company. So each time someone would call me and be like, can you help my child? And I'd say, what insurance do you have? And they say, we have this insurance. I'm like, oh, shoot, I don't take it, but don't worry, I will. And I started just kind of building up that way to help as many kids as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And at one point, about a year and a half into this endeavor, I had 25 kids a week coming into my basement. And I was like, okay, it's time for me to get a place. So we went to our first space, which was in Ipswich, and outgrew it in 3 years. And in the interim, we opened our second location in Amesbury, which is a smaller, quieter location. That one's still going strong. And then we moved the Ipswich location here in Rowley. And then, I just, every time I see something that's an opportunity or another way to help kids, we just figure out a way to add it in. So we try to stay within that whole philosophy that we have of empowering kids and, integrating that high intensity exercise piece, but also really focusing on that self-awareness and self-advocacy piece. And so from that perspective, these things that have kind of offshoot from, traditional OT are a part of our, KidSHINE family. One of the other things that I got myself involved in last year, which has been amazing, is I co-wrote a children's book.
Great.
And so it's going to be a series. It's called King's Day Out, and the first book is The Car Wash. And again, this follows along those lines of empowerment, self-awareness, and self-advocacy. So the hero in the book is a boy named Ben. Ben has sensory processing challenges, and he is going to the car wash with his puppy, King, who is a Bernese Mountain Dog puppy. And in the car wash, the car wash is scary, right? So it's got loud noises, it can be unpredictable. So Ben uses his adventure bag, which is the tools that his OT had practiced with him, and he takes out his noise canceling headphones when the noises are too loud, and he also shows King how to use some of these different strategies. So he covers King's ears, and then at one point he starts to get a little bit overwhelmed, so he pulls on his weighted blanket, and then he gives King a big, huge hug. So we're basically, trying to show kids, like, it's okay to use strategies. It's okay to use whatever you need to be successful in any activity, endeavor, or adventure that you're a part of. And you can also show your friends how to use these same strategies. And so we're hoping to kind of continue to look at what adventures or what everyday activities can be stressful for kids who have sensory processing challenges, and then continue to write books in this series that highlight the strategies that can help.
Oh, that's super. Wow. I don't think that seems like a completely untapped group. I don't think anyone else is writing books to help kids in that way.
There are some social stories that are out there, but the way this is written is very unique. Again, from the perspective of the child who has a sensory processing challenges, he truly is the expert and the hero in this story. And we really just want to normalize the use of these strategies and do it in kind of more of an organic way, as opposed to a social story that would be more like, it's really loud, so I use sound blocker headphones. This is really just kind of being interwoven throughout the story. So it's something that can be read in all classrooms. It can be read, it's kind of got an age range of pre-K through third grade
Mhm.
in terms of reading level and understanding. It's a picture book, so the illustrations are gorgeous. And also, concrete enough that kiddos who might have a harder time understanding concepts within stories can look at those pictures and know exactly what is going on.
Mhm.
So it really does appeal to a wide variety of audiences. And I think that is one thing that makes it very unique.
So exciting. Excellent. So what's next? I mean, do you have another dream in the back of your head that you want to bring into reality?
Yeah, I actually have two.
Awesome.
My staff doesn't know about the other one. They do. So the KidSHINE Boot Camp Program that I talked to you a lot about is in process right now of becoming a program that clinicians can use in their own clinics. And so this is really huge because we're doing another research study in the next few years. We've teamed up with Tufts University. We're going to be doing another, longer range study on the effects of this specific program for improving kids' self-regulation and functional outcomes. And then we're also going to be training clinicians across the country in the program and offering them to be able to use our program in their own clinics. So
Fantastic.
yeah, and then I kind of part of me wants to open another clinic too, but I think I need to get this stuff kind of squared away first, and then we'll go there. But I just have so much energy still, after doing this for almost 5.5 years now on my own. It's even the pandemic, which a year ago I remember sitting in this empty office because we hadn't even fully moved in yet, and going, "Oh my God, what am I gonna do?" Like 2 weeks ago we had 200 clients a week coming through our doors, and now I'm sitting in an empty office.
Yeah.
And you just pivot, you just figure it out, and you just look and say, like, we have a responsibility here to help as many kids as we possibly can, and we can do it, and we will do it. And you just figure it out, and then just
Mhm.
keep rolling with it.
Wow.
We ask the kids to do. We got to
Because the
do.
least we can do is to take our own advice, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Awesome. Amy, this has been awesome. I mean, is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't think to ask? Anything else you want to share with folks? Advice or
Oh,
tips?
let me think. Um, I don't know. I'm really excited that we got to talk about all of the different avenues that kids can be helped.
Me too.
I think that the biggest takeaway is listen to your kids. And that doesn't always necessarily mean wait for them to tell you something. I mean, when you're listening to a child, you're listening to your old child, you really have to listen with your eyes, with your ears, with your heart, with your whole body. And sometimes what a child is doing, even if they're not saying it, is telling you what they need. And when you know what your child needs, or even if you know they need something, but you don't know what that is, find the right person to help. You can start, there's always great resources to start with, in terms of talking to your child's teachers, talking to your child's pediatrician, reaching out in the community and finding out what support services are there. OTs are part of a team, so we work collaboratively with speech therapists, with physical therapists, with teachers, with physicians, with neuropsych professionals, with parents. um, and really, forming that team of people who are there, dedicated to helping your child succeed. That's what you want to be looking for.
Mm, that's wonderful. And I hopefully that also empowers some parents to take action and to realize that, I'm not in this alone. I'm not trying to deal with this child bouncing off the walls on my own. There's a support and there's help out there for me.
Community. I mean, I think community is really key. And I was sitting in my office about a week ago, and there was a boot camp class going on across the other side of our building, and there were a couple of kids who were getting their individual OT sessions. And I looked out my window and I saw 3 or 4 parents who I'm pretty sure met just through hanging out in the parking lot while their kids were taking classes, walking together, like doing laps around the building. And I was like, man, like, this is a community for families, right? We've
Yes.
got a community of parent support for one another, kids support for one another, therapist support for kids and parents together. And it's just having this safe, welcoming community. That's really, really key.
See what you created, Amy?
I have an amazing team behind me. I just have to say, like, this is beyond anything that I could ever do on my own. I mean, I would be nothing without the amazing therapists who work with me and work for me. So I feel very, very fortunate to have such dedicated and intelligent and caring professionals who are a part of the KidSHINE team.
Well, but it's a KidSHINE team that you started. So well done. You hired these people. You got to take some credit.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Amy, for being with us today. And thank you, listener, for listening. If you want to reach out to Amy, what's the best way for folks to reach you, Amy?
Awesome. So they can reach me via email at Amy, AMY, at KidShine, KIDSHINE -OT.com. You can also check out our website, which is www.kidshine-ot.com. And we also have Facebook and Instagram pages with the handle at kidshine.ot. We put lots of different activity ideas on our social media pages. Resources for parents, blog links, inspirational quotes, anything that's semi OT or exercise related, you can find on those pages. So we love to talk to parents. We love to do whatever we can to help.
Nice. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. And I hope you'll be with us next week, listeners. And I'm excited and, like I said, honored that you are here and that you have found us, and that I know that somebody who can benefit from this from Amy's wisdom and from all the tips and tricks and information that she shared. So be sure to share the link for the podcast with them. The show notes and every way to get in touch with Amy, I should say the ways to get in touch with Amy are also in the show notes. So you can check them out there at getyourfillpodcast.com. And we'll see you next week.